Finally, the heat wave has passed. The autumn mornings are cooler, and today it's slightly overcast. As I walk, I discover that the pink gum trees are flowering, much to my delight and also the birds. For the honeyeaters and parrots, the delicate blossoms are like fairy floss, a wonderful autumn treat. And as I stop to admire the last blossoms of the mallee for the year, I am greeted by a loud objection. A pair of lorikeets sitting in the tree squawk at me, letting me know that I am interrupting their breakfast. My friends watch me keenly. After a time, they turn their attention away and get on with life. This encounter gives me food for thought about life's interruptions. There is no doubt that they can be inconvenient and at times unpleasant. And in such cases, it may seem that these interruptions are blocking life's natural course. But perhaps there's another way to see them. Our perception of the world is multi-layered, and our superficial layers often consist of thoughts, beliefs, and expectations. But if we peel away these layers, what is left but the raw essence of life itself? Wonder and curiosity, creativity, magic. And perhaps this is an interruption's gift. It brings us into the moment so that we may witness this magic. Hello Wonder Weavers, I hope that you've had a beautiful week so far, and I hope too your preparations for Easter are going well. I'm curious, what plans do you have for the holidays? Please share with us in the comments below. I'd also be curious to know how your projects are going. This week I took up the challenge of making another bed for Cordelia's bedroom. If you remember a few weeks ago, I made a bed, and when I tried to put it in the room, it didn't fit. And that was honestly the result of a very simple and honest set of mistakes. I'm learning a lot. But I had another go this week, and I've made a bed frame, and I'm just going to take a little bit more time before I reveal it to you so that I can make some linen. And fingers crossed, I'll be able to share the bed with you next week. In the meanwhile, this week I made a wall hanging inspired by the Nursery Alice, or Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And I took an unconventional approach. I dry needle felted the wall hanging, and I hope that you find it interesting, and I would love to hear from you and find out how you like to approach wall fittings and hangings in your dollhouse. Do you like to cross stitch tapestries? Do you like to collage? So perhaps you go through magazines and you create collages that way. Perhaps you use family photos. I'd love to hear about your process. So please share with us in the comments below. So let's get creative and make a wall hanging. Cordelia has received an early birthday present. An aunt has made her a wall hanging inspired by one of her favourite scenes from the Nursery Alice. This is when Alice meets the Cheshire Cat. I start by making a technical drawing of the wall hanging. This sketch is inspired by John Tenniel's illustration for the Nursery Alice. His drawing not only helps me work out a rough composition, but also the colour scheme. I've decided to use a range of colours. I've dyed all of these except for white. In another vlog, I share how I like to dye wool using substances such as food colouring. I've placed a link to that vlog in the description. I also use my drawing to approximate how much wool of each colour I'm going to need. Once I've refined the drawing, I then transfer it to a small piece of calico with carbon paper. As you can see, the drawing is very faint, so I go over it with my graphite pencil. Next, I begin dry felting with a fine needle. I work on Alice's dress first, using once again John Tenniel's illustration as inspiration. The dress will be yellow and blue in colour. I also begin felting Alice's hair, which is yellow and brown wool teased together. Next, I map out the scenery. In the foreground, close to Alice, I begin to felt a rose bush. Before felting the roses, I roll the wool between my fingers. This helps to create a more rounded shape. When I felt, I like to go between features, building them up gradually. In hindsight, I think this helps me work out whether or not the overall composition is balanced. Now that Alice is in an advanced state, I begin working on the Cheshire Cat. For the cat's torso, I start with light brown or coffee-coloured wool. Later I use small threads of dark brown for highlights and his tail. For the Cheshire Cat's eyes, I take 2 wisps of black wool, roll them into a ball, and then attach them to the calico fabric. Meanwhile, for the tree's trunk and branches, I tease together white and dark brown wool. I've decided to make the middle ground of the scene white, but after felting this area, I realise that Alice is a little bit lost. So to distinguish her a little bit more, I add first of all a wisp of blue wool as a trim on the collar of her dress. Then, drawing inspiration from Tenniel's illustration, I felt some vegetation alongside of the tree, including a red flower. Now that I've fully covered the calico fabric, I continue to felt until the wool is firm. Next, I make a frame for the artwork. Following the dimensions of the artwork, I take a rectangular piece of balsa wood. After drawing a series of guidelines in graphite, I remove the center piece or the inner rectangle, first by drilling a series of holes along the guidelines with my awl, and then using my hobby knife. Then I make sure that the picture fits, and it does. I sand the frame. To dress it up a bit, I create a trim with balsa sticks, cut to size. Once completely dry, I round the edges of the trim with sandpaper and then paint the frame with watered down acrylic paint. Once the frame is dry, I trim the calico fabric, leaving a margin just under 1 centimetre in width. I then carefully glue the hanging to the frame with PVA glue. I then cut 4 popsicle sticks to size and glue them to the top and bottom and sides of the frame. To further protect the fabric, I cover the back of the frame with cardstock cut to size. To hold the cardstock in place, I've used double-sided tape. Thank you sincerely for watching, Wonder Weavers. I appreciate every view, like and comment. It has been truly wonderful to share my journey with you so far. In the meanwhile, Wonder Weavers, take care, stay well, and don't forget to play. Adios. Ciao. What do you and Muffin think about Aunt Jane's present, Cordelia? It's lovely, isn't it?